This is a podcast by the News Minute, and you are listening to South Central.
Hello and welcome to South Central, a TNM podcast where we put the South at the center. I am Dhanya Rajendran, your host. This week, I'm joining from the city of Hyderabad. I'm here to attend the Lit Fest. So if you're around in Hyderabad, then do come for the Lit Fest. My session is on Saturday afternoon, but they've got an interesting lineup. In fact, it's a week of literary fest. There's one in Kozhikode. The Kozhikode Literary Fest is happening. The Mathrubhumi Lit Fest is happening in Thiruvananthapuram and a Hyderabad Lit Fest. But not participating in any of the Lit Fests for now and sitting in the Bengaluru studio is my colleague and the reporting head of the News Minute, Pooja Prasanna. Pooja, are you holding the office together?
I am very unhappy that you're going around eating very nice spicy food in Hyderabad while I am forced to sit here in the studio and work. So that's me sulking.
Yeah, and this time I decided I will only eat Telangana cuisine. So I've been trying to do that. Okay, so before we go to the headlines, just a quick reminder. South Central is a podcast that comes every Friday. So do keep a reminder, listen to the podcast. We discuss South Indian headlines and then we deep dive into one or two topics every week. But some weeks, like this one, we'll not be discussing about a news event, but we will have one or two guests who will talk about a specific topic. And this week, we are going to have reviewers Sucharita Tyagi and Anna Vetikar join us to understand how reviewing has become almost like boxing these days. So Pooja, to the headlines.
We start with Tamil Nadu. TTV Dinakaran rejoins NDA and he accepts EPS's leadership. For a long time now, he had been resisting, EPS's leadership leading the NDA coalition in Tamil Nadu. But looks like he has agreed for coalition and he has come into the fold. There has been celebration about how this will strengthen NDA in Telangana. In Tamil Nadu, Telangana is in my head clearly. But that's one headline. But we also have another election-related development. Vijay's TVK gets whistle symbol for 2026 assembly elections in Tamil Nadu. And actor-politician Kamal Hassan's M&M was also allotted a battery torch symbol by the ECI. Another headline from Tamil Nadu, but not related to any kind of elections. Chennai Corporation fixes net over drain to end mosquito menace. The Greater Chennai Corporation's move to cover storm water drain silt catch pits with mosquito nets has triggered criticism and ridicule, with residents questioning the effectiveness of the measure amid persistent illegal sewage connections. Another election-going state, Kerala, but this isn't about the election. Indian woman arrested after suicide of man she accused of sexual misconduct. I would also recommend that you read Sukanya Shaji's piece on our website. The headline reads, "The uneasy questions raised by Kerala man's death, this after her arrest. While the family's loss is irreversible," Sukanya says, the larger discourse has turned tables on the woman, shifting her position from being an alleged victim of sexual misbehavior to an abettor of suicide. So this is a very nuanced piece, so I would recommend that you read it. Dhanya, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think we have actually moved ahead of that piece now. That piece was written before Shimjita, who's the person who took that video on the bus of a man named Deepak. Deepak then died of suicide. So now Shimjita has been booked by the police. She has been arrested. In fact, 1 or 2 hours before we went into recording of this episode, the remand report of Shimjita is out, in which the police is saying that she's taken 7 videos of Deepak. So if the police can prove that there was no sexual harassment by Deepak, then definitely legally it is trouble for Shimjita. But I don't know how they will be able to even then prove abetment, because that's not easy, as we do not have any reports of Deepak leaving behind a suicide note. This is what lawyers are saying. So I don't know how legally this will play out. But socially, now, while there will be anger against Shimjita or anyone who a society believes led another person to death, to die by suicide, that's understandable. And there is anger against Shimjita. People want her arrested. When I say people, I'm saying both women and men have been saying that law should take its own course. But what's happening in the last 2-3 days has been, I think, shocking is a mild term to use for that. This opportunity, I would for many. This is an opportunity for many in which they're using this to simply paint all women as problematic, all complaints as bad. There are so many memes on Instagram and there are so many reels on all these channels where, men are wearing cardboard boxes around them. There are AI videos of men with thorns on them like a porcupine, men like porcupines. So when they go on the bus, then there's another one where a man is wearing around 20 CCTV cameras on him so that women cannot book them in fake complaints. I mean, forever, women have been talking about the fact that they get sexually harassed on public transport, especially in a state like Kerala. But with one instance, just to, sweep away that entire problem under the carpet is highly problematic. And one good thing is that initially, I think everyone was too shocked at what was happening. So they allowed this hate to just fester. But today, I see a lot of pushback from both women and men saying that, look, this incident is bad. Yes, let us condemn this person, but let's not use that to mock any woman who complains about sexual harassment.
Moving on to the next headline from Kerala. The Kerala High Court termed Sabrimala gold case organized plunder, rejects bail to key accused. And the justice noted that the accused wield considerable influence in society and could misuse their position if released on bail, pointing out in particular to Padma Kumar, who continues to be a member of a political party.
Padma Kumar was a CPIM MLA and he continues to be district committee member of the CPIM. In fact, I think 3 leaders of CPIM and 1 leader of the CPI has been arrested in the entire scam. If you put a Malayalam channel, that's all you will see. Everybody's discussing about the Sabrimala gold scam. And it will definitely have an impact on the CPI in this election.
Moving on to Karnataka. In fact, this is from earlier this morning. We are recording this on Thursday. The Chief Minister of Karnataka, Siddaramaiah, attacks Governor's 2-line speech, considers approaching Supreme Court. Governor Gehlot refused to deliver his customary address in the Assembly, objecting to more than 11 paragraphs in the draft prepared by the Congress government, which contained sharp criticism of the Union government over the introduction of VBG Ramji Act. Now, this was a special session that was called in particularly to discuss these things and pass a resolution against scrapping of Manrega and bringing in VBG Ramji. And in the last I think a week, we've seen this government versus governor play out in at least 3 southern states, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Kerala as well. The custom is that whatever the cabinet approves, the governor reads at the beginning of the assembly. This governor first refused to come and address the joint session. Then when he did come, he read 2 lines, fairly inconsequential to why the assembly was called. So this has become a huge controversy. Danya, your WhatsApp forward talks about your favorite goat beard governor. Do tell audience about it.
Yeah, so for the small privileged group who get my broadcast message, I sent this governor story and I just wrote goat beard. So a lot of people message me back saying, what is goat and beard got to do with it? That is apparently a quote by C.N. Annadure, like a goat does not need a beard. States do not need governors. But I think this governor is not a governor. He's a petulant child. First thing, he refuses to come to assembly and he has a problem with 11 paragraphs where the government is saying that we don't appreciate the way Manrega scheme itself has been changed to VB Ram Jairam.
VBG Ramji.
Sorry, what?
VBG Ramji. I think you said Jairam.
Sorry, Okay, now, so he refuses to come to the assembly. And then when he is forced to come, obviously he knows that if he does not come and the case goes to Supreme Court, it's not going to look good for him because the Supreme Court has not been kind to governors in general in the recent past. So if it goes to court, it won't look good on him. So he came to the assembly and what did he do? He just said 2 or 3 lines and left. So that's not a governor, that's a petulant child. This is a problem we have been saying forever, whether it was the Congress or the BJP. The governors have been misused. The Congress did. The BJP, like Pooja says, is the Congress on steroids. They do it even more.
Yeah, but your comment on governor being a petulant child could even apply to Governor Ravi in Tamil Nadu. Just, change names and the things apply. But interestingly, Chief Minister Stalin has said something about seriously looking at whether governors should be making those speeches, because it's just become a battleground. Every single assembly session, there is some issue going on. Next headline from Karnataka. Bengaluru airport staffer arrested for sexually harassing foreign passenger. The accused, whose name is Mohammad Afan Ahmed, who's a resident of Kamanalli in Bengaluru, was not authorized to conduct frisking. He apparently took the passenger to the men's restroom and conducted frisking, and while doing that, inappropriately touched her. This is very shocking, and I hope he gets punished and pulled up accordingly. Bengaluru court bars TV9 Kannada News 9 from reporting on suspended DGP. The order directed the channels to take down all such defamatory videos, audio clips, call recordings, visuals, newspaper reports already available on their website and official social media handles.
No, this is something I don't understand. The court could have said, okay, take down the video itself. Now, for those who are clueless, this DGP rank officer, Ramachandra Rao, was seen in videos with at least 2 or 3 different women. He was making out with them, for the lack of another term, in his office while he's sitting in office. And both the woman and the man are very visible in these videos. Now, he has claimed that this is AI. Everything is made with AI. Now, that is for the police to say whether this is made with AI. The point is TV9 has reported and shown the visuals. Now, the court could have asked, take down that visual because that is always on the internet. But how can the court say stop reporting? That is a problem, right? Everywhere the court says stop reporting.
Bengaluru courts and their enthusiasm in giving such orders. Of course, we will look at this from a different context in our conversation a little later. But let's look at headlines from Telangana. 100 more stray dogs poisoned in Telangana. Sarpanch among 3 booked. Earlier, 120 dog bodies were retrieved from 2 villages in Hanumakonda district of Telangana, while another 100 were recovered from Kamareddy. This is so disturbing. Week on week, we're getting more such things. So, Dhanya, as our bureau was saying, apparently this was one of the promises of the elections, and there was almost no opposition from the residents of these villages, which is even more disturbing. It's not just dogs. Apparently, they claim there was some monkey menace too, and I wonder how they're looking at addressing that issue. Suspended Telangana officer raided assets worth over 7 crores seized. According to the Telangana ACB, the market value of what has been seized is over 50 crores. And they have registered a case of disproportionate assets against Aramada Venkat Reddy, who's the additional collector of revenue, and he's also the district in charge education officer, and he's currently placed under suspension. Andhra mulls Australia-style under-16 social media ban. This was a remark by Nara Lokesh, who's in Davos. He was speaking to a news channel, and he said that they're looking at this as a state. They will look at what Australia did in 2024. Australia had prohibited children under 16 from accessing social media platforms, citing growing concerns over mental health, online harm, cyberbullying, and addictive algorithms. Tanya, as a mother of a teen, do you endorse such a move?
No, I don't think that a blanket ban of social media is also a good move, right? Because we can't forget that for a lot of children, there are resources that they get through the internet. And you can't just block that for everybody, including translation now. A lot of children aren't dependent on it. I think there has to be another way. And kids are smart too. They use VPN. They know how to get through bans. They are much smarter than the people who impose bans. Like, when teachers have online classes, kids keep screenshots of themselves. They're actually sleeping or playing, but they just keep screenshot to just show the teacher that they're attending class. So kids will figure out a way, and a blanket ban is never a solution for anything. Though, in my own house, I would like to have it.
Chandrababu Naidu pitches Andhra as global investment destination at Davos. The Andhra CM is in a 4-day visit to Switzerland to participate in the World Economic Forum annual meeting 2026. Well, it's not just on Chandrababu Naidu, but my comment, it has been extremely entertaining to see the Indian chief ministers, Indian, officials there meeting with each other, spending time with each other there instead of actually talking to other investors. Last headline, this is a national one. Kashmiri journalists working for National Daily summoned by Jammu and Kashmir police. One asked to sign a bond over a mistake. Bashar Basharat Masood, a senior journalist with the Indian Express, was made to report to the police several times last week. Meanwhile, Hindustan Times' Ashiq Hussain was also called. So another way of harassing journalists, especially in Jammu and Kashmir. That's it for the headlines for this week.
Okay, so like I said, this week we are just going to discuss one topic and we have two special guests with us, Sucharita Tyagi and Anna Vettikad. Anna is, of course, a familiar face for people on South Central because it's the third time that she's coming. So what are we going to discuss today? Now, across Indian cinema, film criticism or reviewing is starting to resemble a boxing ring rather than a conversation. Reviewers aren't just disagreed with anymore, they are punched from at all sides. Organized hate campaigns, dissenting opinions, everything. There's a coordinated online pile on reviewers, and both Sucharita and Anna have been at the receiving end. But I'm not going to restrict the conversation to just that. There are many things to discuss, including how Telugu and Kannada movies are getting gag orders against reviews. No reviewing online, no reviewing under any movie app, and these reviews are being taken down. And there are lots of magistrates giving these gag orders too. Of course, we'll also touch upon A.R. Rahman and what's been happening recently after his comments. So first, I'll come to you, Sucharita. I think 2019 is when you reviewed Kabir Singh, and then it all started.
Was it 2019? Was it another lifetime? Was it yesterday? I don't know. But yes, the majority of the terribleness started then, yes.
But Anna, you have been around for a long time reviewing movies. And at one point of time, I remember you were in Headlines Today where you used to have reviews, you used to have interviews. How have things changed? I remember that when we were in TV, we were told that don't ask questions which will hurt this person or don't ask controversial questions because we also need to get those interviews and the reviews cannot be too harsh. So I always thought there's a commercial interest which the legacy media had with movies, which sort of is not there, right? When it comes to someone like Sucharita or so many other people, like even you and you now do, there are not those many commercial interests really bogging you down.
To be fair to Headlines Today, no one ever told me not to give a negative review or not to ask harsh questions. And I was actually doing something that's always, that is tricky. And I don't recall how many people were doing those at that time, but I was reviewing plus interviewing. And there were occasions when I had reviewed somebody's film and a few days later, I was reaching out to them for an interview. And I have to say, to be fair to the Hindi film industry primarily, because in those days, this is 2005 to 2010, I was reviewing Hindi films. And while some of them, some stars grumbled behind my back to colleagues in Bombay, I cannot remember a single occasion, Danya, when someone said, we're not going to give you an interview because you gave us a negative review. And never once did my bosses at Headlines Today pull me up for having been, I was outspoken. It's not like I was making personal remarks. It was always a critique of the film. Of course, I noticed when I joined Twitter towards 2008 or 9, I think is when I joined, I noticed that film fans were extremely harsh. But around 2013-14, by which time I was a freelance journalist and I was writing for the Hindu Business Line and a few other places, that's when I began to notice the communalization of the response to reviews. And I remember speaking to Raja Sen in 2017. Raja is now, he writes films, but at that time, he was one of the earliest people to do online reviews. And I remember in those early days, I used to see the venom that was directed at him. But it was always, we hate you, you're a horrible person, we hate your parents, family, whatever, abusing the women in the family. It was ridiculously rabid film fans. I began to notice the communalization around 2013-14. With the Modi era, it became more pronounced. And in 2015 end, if you remember, when Amir and Shah Rukh both simultaneously around the same time happened to give interviews saying there's rising intolerance in the country. Actually, very innocuous comments. They just said rising intolerance. The response to reviews became so ugly after that, Dhanya. And from 2015 onwards, I tell you, for the first time in my life, I was made so conscious of being a minority community member in the professional arena. As women, you and I, we all know that if a male critic is abused, a woman critic will be abused 10 times more. But to have constantly being told, and now it's been 12 years since Modi came to power, to constantly be told that I'm acting as an agent of the Vatican. And those are mild comments, you know, the kind of abuse. You've seen some of the screenshots I've shared with you. I remember 3-4 years ago, perhaps it was, there was this guy who stripped on camera, masturbated on camera, and sent me the videos in Facebook DMs. And just, it's the communalization, the way they would, these people, who are not the traditional film fans, but they're clearly a BJP orchestrated mob intersecting with film fans, identifying Akshay Kumar, Hrithik Roshan and people like that as quote unquote Hindu actor, identifying Shah Rukh, Salman, Amir, but especially Shah Rukh and Amir, not so much Salman because his family is friendly with Modi, Shah Rukh and Amir as Muslim actors. And next tech, the reviewer. You are an agent of the Vatican. You are a Chrislamo-commie Hindu hater. You are a rice bag Christian. People now know what rice bag Christian is as a term. It's become very widely known on the social media. Back in 2014-15, I was hearing it for the first time. So this to me is the distinguishing factor between the pre-Modi and the post-Modi era, when the attacks are communally profiling both the artists and the reviewer. And I think sadly, I mean, it's a very sad thing to have to say, but also sadly in this era, there has been a decline in the number of members of minority communities who are writing reviews in the English reviewing space. So perhaps that's also a reason, like, you know, if you have 10 people to abuse versus having 1 or 2, it just becomes more concentrated if you're targeting just 1 or 2 people. So, of course, always film critics have faced abuse. Post-Modi era, everybody has started facing a different kind of abuse. I'm just distinguishing, just letting you know that there is a certain diversity. These are very planned, and it's not happening innocently and organically. Of course, there's no innocence in communal venom, but it's not happening organically. It's not organically driven hate. It is an orchestrated campaign.
Sucharita, tell us what's been happening with you, because Anna also writes about, like, let's say, Malayalam movies. And I've seen that there too, sometimes she gets attacked by fan clubs. She's, of course, gotten a lot of love from Telugu fans after what she wrote of Bahubali. But what has your experience been?
That was a wonderful piece that she wrote on Bahubali too, and they dug up old things and all that. But what Anna wrote, it was just so delightful to read. It's always wonderful to read her pieces. So what has happened is that this year there have been 2 films which have bookended the year sort of, that have had the worst kind of trolling that has followed. The first one was Lakshman Utekar's Chhava. That caught me by surprise because I didn't think that would happen. Maybe I was just being naive about it. But I put my review out, and that was in February. And then the end of the year closed out with Dhurandhar, which was Aditya Dhar's new film. Starring 2 of the major movie stars in this nation right now, 2 of the biggest films of the year, which have made a lot of money, bookending the whole year. And, you know, these actors are going to be winning all these big awards soon, and good for them, whatever. But beginning of the year and end of the year, this is the first time ever that I had to turn off comments under my YouTube videos, because people comment, people can be angry. What are they going to do? They're going to jump out of your screen and hurt you? No, you can choose to read it, not read it, walk away from your computer screen. But, I had to turn off the comments because they got like really weird and strange and really like personal and threatening, and spilled over from YouTube and onto Instagram, onto Twitter, onto Reddit. And I just had to like block all of these apps on my phone, like, so I couldn't read anything even if I wanted to. What's happening right now since December is early December is that like the statement that was put out by the Film Critics Guild as well, it feels like water over the head a little bit, you know. Why do you care so much? I have a very small platform. I have a platform with 150,000 subscribers that does not compare to the amount of marketing budgets that this film has, to the amount of star power that this film has. So if I made an 8-minute or 10-minute video talking about my opinions in the film, why does that make that much of a difference in the world? But if it does, you know, engage with how one must engage with cultural commentary. But I suppose that's asking for too much at this point. Initially, you could sense that some accounts are troll accounts because they're nameless and they're faceless. Then come the usual suspects, which are the big accounts, which have a political leaning very obviously on social media, without, you know, they're not hiding it. And then what's left behind is actual people with real accounts, real names, and real faces who genuinely are caught up in the aftermath of all of this and are convinced that film critics are wrong, that what we are saying is, and you know, that's okay. You don't have to agree with everything we say. You don't have to agree with anything we say. But it's turned into that this profession is dumb. Y'all don't deserve to be where you are. You don't deserve the attention. You shouldn't be doing this. You're bad at your job. This job is stupid. Which has been really heartbreaking to observe, because I've been doing this not for very long, not certainly as long as Anna has, and so many other women who've come before me writing about cinema and who've dealt with this. But I have been doing this for 10 years, and it is 11 years at this point, and it is a free service that I'm providing on YouTube. You don't have to pay to watch it. And I'm really just trying to engage with art. I'm really just trying to engage with culture. And if the audience that I'm speaking with is now not listening, or now actively shutting me off and shutting not just me off, shutting opinion off, that's just been sad to observe. That is my overwhelming sort of space where I am right now. I'm just sad. Yeah.
But Sucharita, the two movies that you mentioned, Chava at the beginning of the year and Dhurandhar now, is aligned with a certain kind of ideology. Their historical perspective, how they're trying to kind of rewrite history, because Chava was criticized for distorting history, and not with the purpose of simplifying things, but with the purpose of vilifying a particular community. And Dhurandhar 2 is accused of kind of pushing a certain government, certain people in the government. So do you feel that this kind of, you know, viciousness against reviewers coincides, like Anna said, with an attempt to rewrite history? Because we've spoken about how film institutions, there is an attempt to take over from FTII to other such institutions. There is also this propaganda films and Prime Minister, Home Minister of the country, everybody endorsing these propaganda movies. So do you see that as a factor in how these attackers are getting extremely vicious?
Like Anna just said, initially we fandoms. Salman fans would get angry with you, or Shah Rukh fans would get angry with you, or Akshay Kumar fans would get angry with you, and you're like, whatever, you know, they're fans of a human person. They don't like what you do. That's okay. But now it feels very like targeted, and there are some films and some titles that you know now that this is what the response is going to be, and it wasn't like that. You know, there's been very obvious and propaganda earlier as well. This is not that propaganda has just begun in 2025. There have been films about political leaders, a prime minister, this, that, and the other, about the opposition leader, Manmohan Singh, about Narendra Modi. All these films have been coming out over the last couple of years, but honest opinion to those films, even ridiculing the craft of the film, the technical inability to be a good film, was okay. Now you're feeling like, okay, whatever I say about this movie, short of saying amazing, incredible, 100%, give it Oscar, nothing else will do. You cannot, and that's really scary, because that's fully muzzling your freedom of speech, or at least attempting to muzzle your freedom of speech. Sometimes you can point out, that this film is going to have this sort of a reaction to your review.
Can I just say something? when I said it is strategized, I think that you would have noticed, Danya. See, you've started your own independent outlet, but you would know, of course, that there is a certain kind of liberal political journalist who, from the UPA 2 era, every time they wrote something about the Congress or about Rahul Gandhi, they would be shamed, abused, etc., etc. And over time, some of these people, very prominent faces, I'm not going to name them, started playing it safe by saying all political parties are equally bad. So anything that they said that was critical of BJP, they would make sure that they add something about the Congress. If ever they talked about the 2002 pogrom in Gujarat, they would make sure they bring up the 1984 pogrom in Delhi. And I think that the goal of communalizing the response to film reviews is to make film critics also behave in that fashion and hold back and become self-conscious. So far, I'm very proud to say that by and large, Indian film critics have not fallen for that. But, film reviews being pulled down because there was a communal attack, I think that is a very disturbing trend. And we need to all stand together in solidarity and stand by what we are saying also. And see the strategy. Now, Sucharita was talking about the number of subscribers she has on her YouTube channel. I write for various publications, national, international. Some are huge, some are small. But on my Facebook page, I have just 5,800 followers. And a few weeks back, I wrote a small review of the Hindi film Ikkis. Please see the section. It's flooded with comments by people trying to divert the discussion to another film, a propaganda film that is running in theaters right now that I will not name because I don't want to sully my tongue with the name of that film. It's a film that Sucharita has reviewed. And they're going on and on saying, oh, you're praising this film and you don't want us to watch that other film. But, it has made 1,000 crores, so there's nothing you can do about it. I've not mentioned that other film in my Facebook post of Ikkis. I have not named any other film. I simply said Ikkis is so lovely because it is not doing propaganda in a time of propagandist cinema. Now, what is the strategy? They want all of us to fall for this and start writing articles where every comment on Ikkis is also accompanied by a comment on that other film so that the space that Ikkis deserves to have ends up being halved. So that's why I said, and the other point is that around 2014-15 onwards, I started noticing, look, film fans are vicious and they're often vicious. There's nothing new about that. But I started noticing that some of the people who were picking on my reviews and my articles were like, it was like issuing a dog whistle because these were verified handles at a time when a verified handle on Twitter meant something. It meant you were a recognized in a particular position. And some of them were party spokespersons. And some of them were members of the party saying things like, look at this Anna Vetikard's review of such and such film. I mean, that's unconscionable. You are a person who belongs to the most powerful entity in the country, and you're trying to direct a mob towards an individual, and that too an individual who you are identifying as belonging to a social group that your party hates. And so you want the mob to attack that person in that manner. So they want they want to steer the conversation, and this is very carefully planned.
So, mentioning that movie's name would be a Durandam, Anna, for the Malayalis who will get the joke.
Very subtle, Anya.
Sucharita. Sucharita. So, Anna was talking about the politics, but I want to talk about something very different. Masculinity. Especially after Me Too, what I think is that, I'm not a movie watcher. I watch movies only through reviews. So whatever you guys write, put on YouTube, I see that, I read that, and I go to Wikipedia and read the story. So that's my movie watching experience. Some of them I do go for. No, but I learned a lesson because I would go for a movie and then I will just tweet my opinion. I have not even film review, just my opinion about a movie, and I've got harassed so badly, like rape threats, everything, that I just stopped going for movies because I can't stop myself from giving my opinion. So I decided not to watch movies.
See, how sad that is. Can we just reflect on how sad that is? A person who likes to go to the movies doesn't go to the movies anymore because they are scared of what others will say to them for their experience of enjoying a piece of art.
Danya, I just want to add, because you're very polite and you're not saying this, but your experience with that. Do you mind if I name the film and the star?
No problem.
Your experience with Vijay fans is clear proof that film fans are vicious and have always been vicious towards people who don't fawn over the star they love or the movie they love.
Against women specifically, females.
Doubly against women film critics. But like I said, in the post-2014 era, it has become this Hindu actor, Muslim actor, you are a Christian critic, how dare you, etc., etc. So it become whatever the viciousness that there was, multiply that by 1,000,000 times, and that is what we are seeing against film critics in the Modi era.
So, Sucharita, let's go to masculinity in movies, right? Especially after Me Too. I think there is this whole wave of masculine movies, and one of the directors who's been very successful in that genre is Sandeep Banga. I've seen that he has he personally comes on the battlefield like a general with a dog whistle, right? So while politics on one side, there are these individuals also who have now realized that there is merit to actually making sure that all of you are threatened or harassed, and at some point of time, this is going to make you self-censor. That is a goal to which this is going.
Yeah, you know, it was, I remember that morning when one particular interview dropped and suddenly my social media went crazy and I was like, what has happened? I thought this movie was behind me, because it was a couple of days after that movie and that review and everything, and that review had trended on YouTube, and because that was a different era, like movie reviews used to trend on YouTube. No one gives a shit anymore. But it was... I don't, you know what, this is where we are right now, where I'm like, can I give some benefit of doubt to a filmmaker who psyched his fans on me? Because I don't think that he was trying to psych a mob on me. He was just giving an interview and speaking his mind without realizing what happens when you pinpoint a certain particular reviewer or a person like that on the internet. But the aftermath and the fallout was that this whole mob came after not just me, but others like me as well. And I was like, do you see what you're doing? Does any one of you realize what is happening? And that is what I've said recently also, in one of the live streams that I do on my channel occasionally with other film critics. Like, do you forget everything? Forget the intention of your film, forget the intention of your messaging, whatever. Do you see what's happening after? And are you okay with it? Is that okay with you? That your fans, people who like your work, people you have cultivated, emotions you have incubated, are spilling out like this and attacking people to the extent that self-censoring is going to happen. Women are scared. People are coming after journalists, women specifically. I am insulated, frankly, Dhanya, from a lot of this because of my caste status, because of my religious status. There's a whole other layer of trolling that I don't even have to face, but others do. So it's like men who are writing this and making this and have the power of changing narrative, creating narrative. Are you seeing what happens after, what the aftermath and the fallout? And if you are, what do you think about it? And if you are not, how are you looking the other way? Why are you not like, look, watch? Cultural commentary is important. We are not news providers. We are not giving facts. We are opinion providers. We are giving opinions. We are opening debates. We're starting conversations. At least that's the attempt. And when I started doing movie reviews on YouTube, I think that was because it was 2015 and we were just sort of coming off this like liberal bubble that we had been in, globally, not just in India. It was things were happening and more platforms were opening. I mean, it was amazing. And I was like, this is going to be great. This is like, what a good time to be a woman on the internet. Yeah, I want to say my opinion, but it has only gone down steadily from there. And every day to just show up and be strong and be like, I'm going to speak my piece. I am not going to pander. Anvita Dutt, I was doing an interview with her a year or two ago, and she's like, Abhi to pander hota. I can't pander anymore. I can't do it. I can't pander to people. Even if you try, I won't be able to look myself in the mirror. And I'm very pretty. I like to look myself in the mirror. So we would just make some of us were making our lists of films that are coming up in 2026 and films that we have liked in 2025. Men. And films that I'm actively looking forward to from male filmmakers that I like. There's just no announcements that I could find of, except perhaps Geetu Mohandas, of prominent female filmmakers whose films are coming out this year. So it's not just about masculinity in cinema. It's just a whole bubble of testosterone that we are in right now.
Now, I understand a character like Vanga. He's now notorious for these things. But even relatively saner voices, like before Dhurandar's release, R. Madhavan dissed reviewers and said that, they don't really say anything substantial except for kind of pushing their agenda. Paresh Rawal, time and again, has said things derogatory about... Again, when I say relatively sane, I don't know if I should include Paresh Rawal in that or not. I'm a little on the edge on that. But he's also said that. So, Anna, I want to get your take on whether this is an attempt to kind of push out any neutral reviewers at all and just have people they can control and the kind of reviews they want online.
I think that they want to bully any liberal film critic into silence. And also, perhaps it's exasperating to them that by and large, I confess I am unable to follow film reviews in other languages, but in the Indian English language reviewing space, by and large, I have to say the film critics I follow have been progressive liberal voices. Not all of them necessarily give political commentary, but you can see from their take on films that they're progressive liberal voices. And perhaps this is something that's exasperating to the right wing because they have been able to flood the rest of the media, not independent media, but not independent media, but the corporate media. They've been able to flood the corporate media with right-wing voices, and they how they are online. They will say, "Oh, the News Minute, oh, the Wire, these are commie lefties, etc., etc." But it must be exasperating to them that across most mainstream platforms, whether they're the independent media or the legacy media, by and large, the film critics writing in English are liberal progressive. So I think this is a way of pressuring. Second, Pooja, be very careful about who you put on that list of sedate, decent voices, because at least one of the people you named has actually been publicly abusive. And secondly, there are people who they know how to, you don't have to necessarily as a public figure be abusive, and yet you can give enough hints to your fan following to let them know that you would like them to indulge in mob abuse. And Danya, of course, last year I experienced a very, very famous actress. Again, I'm not going to bother to name her, but she gave an interview saying that I am sexually repressed and I hate the human body and sex. And that's why I wrote an article about her Telugu film 10 years ago. 10 years I've been living rent-free in her mind. Now, what do you think the purpose of that was 10 years later to talk about it, if not to see if the public will come after me now in the way they came after me then? But I have to say this stands out for me as much as I'm saying the mob online is violent and abusive against film critics and is trying to manipulate us. I want to speak about organizations like the Network of Women in Media India that Danya, you and I are a part of. I'm part of this FIPRESCI India, which is the India chapter of the International Federation of Film Critics. the kind of solidarity that one has and expressions of solidarity and support one has received from them. I was not a member of NWMI when they reached out to me in 2017 and said, we see what film fans are doing in response to your review of the Hindi film Toilet Ek Prem Katha, and we'd like to offer you our support. We were thinking of issuing a statement in support of you. And I was like, my goodness, these ladies, I didn't know this organization existed. I'm embarrassed to say that. And they are taking the initiative. So as much as I think that it's a very disturbing, troubling time, I have to also say that I see hope in things like this. For every person who has abused me and called me a rice bag and told me that I don't deserve to live in India, etc., because of X or Y review, I have had people jumping in to defend me. I'm an eternal optimist. My glass is half full all the time. So I want to make this clear. And, people like you, Dhanya, so many other people in independent media organizations who've reached out and said, we're going to write about this. And would you like to comment? If you don't like to comment, it's okay. We respect you. Do you think it'll help you if we put out a statement, or should we be silent? What do you prefer? And being, I don't know if protective is the word to use, but certainly being sensitive to what one is dealing with. And I have to say, it's been personally traumatic. I'm not an innocent baby. It's not like I grew up in an India that was perfect. It's not like I never faced communal prejudice growing up. And post 1992, it became more pronounced. But post 2014 has been a traumatic period. And so the fact that there are people who support us when we certainly I have got a lot of support, and therefore when I see fellow journalists dealing with crap, I reach out and I speak to them also. I want to look at the positive side of it too. The world is not all bad.
But Anna, when you were speaking, I was really shocked. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this podcast will be noted in history, because this is where Anna Vetikart gives an idea to the right wing to flood with their own reviewers on media channels and newspapers. Imagine they'll be writing reviews from now. You put out the idea. Yeah.
Let me qualify that. Their websites do have film critics, and it must be exasperating for them that those film critics are not being taken seriously. And you may remember, this is a very important incident when Angamali Diaries was released, the Malayalam film. There was a particular reviewer on a particular right-leaning website that said that film was too Christian and it has too much of Christian imagery and too many churches and Christian individuals, etc., etc. Do you remember that? And the thing is that nobody took that person seriously in Kerala, and that platform and that critic weren't taken seriously. So let me qualify that by saying it must be exasperating for the right wing that the film critics that are taken seriously in this country are all liberals to the extent that I know them, and that the people that they have tried to prop up as film critics are not being taken seriously.
So Charita, one thing I just want to ask you, just taking away from this whole political masculine discussion, is that in the minds of people there's also a doubt, right? Are all reviewers genuinely doing their job? Are they paid? Because I think on Alia Bhatt movie, there was a controversy saying that there are paid reviews, etc. Right? So how do you also, those battles are also there. The sanctity of the job. Is everybody doing it right? So does that also come across to you a lot? Like people telling you, oh, we can't believe in reviewers because you must be paid.
Yeah. So that is also very, very, it's a messy space right now as well, right? Because of the YouTube boom that has happened in the last 10 years or 12 years-ish, when the platform really sort of erupted in this nation. And there's ways and techniques to get eyeballs on your YouTube channel. You make a clickbaity thumbnail, clickbaity title, and then people begin to come, and then people begin to join you, and your channel grows and grows and grows. And that also, for many people, can lead to corruption. It can lead to being enticed by, and I don't know. I can't take any names that I know this person takes money or that person takes money, but there are these people out there, and nobody is saying that everything is perfect and this side is amazing and that side is not amazing. It's culture. Culture is messy. But there are many YouTube channels and just social media pages that cannot be believed. It is true. It's very true. That's why organizations like FIPRESCI, organizations like the Film Critics Guild, like the Women in Media Collective, when you become a member of these organizations, you sort of take a solemn vow to not sully your craft and your profession. There's various ways your work is vetted, and every year, some in some places every year you have to prove that you're still doing this job and you're doing this regularly, and that sort of can become way to distinguish actual people who are actual film critics across platforms versus people who are just running channels and perhaps taking money for being positive about a thing or the other. And it's so bizarre because it's what I'm doing. I'm running a YouTube channel. I don't work for a publication, but I am involved with various film critic organizations, and I try to keep putting forward the message of the importance of actual, honest, true film criticism. And in that process, I have lost a lot of people to these other pages and these other places where they're getting their film information from now in very, simple ways. But it is what it is. It's just what's happening in the world right now.
I when we're talking about getting attacked for reviews, the Bengaluru courts have gone a step ahead. Before you even give a review, or whether it's critical, neutral, whichever, 3 Kannada movies of 3 big superstars in the Kannada film industry have gotten gag orders, and the 3 different Bengaluru courts have happily complied, given ex parte John Doe orders before the movie release for any kind of content, reviews, online, otherwise. The actors that we're talking about are Shivraj Kumar, Kicha Sudeep, and Upendra, and the movies are Devil, Mark, and 45. Anna, what do you make of these orders? Do you think it sets a very, very dangerous precedent, and we can expect something like this across the country, since you're anyway giving ideas to right wing and courts and all?
Sorry to interrupt, Anna. Just one thing, I want to just make this point before I forget. I'm so sorry. To your previous question, Dhanya, I'm so sorry. People getting corrupted and taking money to do this. Who is giving them money? Who is providing? Who has created this monster? Please look at yourselves and answer this question first. Your PR agencies, your marketing firms have created this monster. So, all right, Anna, sorry.
No, but I just want to add to what Pooja said. It's not just Kannada movies. 2 Telugu movies also have got, and they have got it from Bengaluru because Bengaluru courts are the experts in giving gag orders.
You might remember, I think it was if I remember correctly, 2024 is when I first remember writing about this. And this was in the context of Malayalam cinema. If you remember, there were these 2 filmmakers who one filed a police complaint, and I think one went to court in Kerala and got, there was a hearing in which I think the judge said that at that point, the judge agreed that before film reviews come out, before a film is out, or for a particular period, they shouldn't come out, etc. And this filmmaker who went to the police and complained about planted reviews. Now, I think that right now, as much as, of course, there is corruption within the film reviewing space, obviously, like in any space in the world, there will be corrupt elements. But there has been this corruption in the film reviewing space primarily has arisen in the past decade or so because film industries in India themselves have been trying their best to discredit credible reviewers. So they started bringing in social media influencers and people who are running YouTube channels dishonestly. And it's really sad because, of course, there are honest honest YouTubers, but they gave the they gave YouTube a bad name, and they gave social media influencing a bad name, because the film producers themselves started inviting these people to film previews. And then from what one hears from the industry itself, they themselves are making complaints that the money that is being demanded is going through the roof. Boss, you created a Frankenstein's monster, and now you are grumbling about it. And truth be told, Dhanya, because now I don't do weekly reviews, I do occasional reviews. I have stopped going for film previews because, at least in Delhi, it had become awful, because from a previous era when there would be like 20, 50 very serious film critics who are professional film critics, the hall of the preview started getting packed with people who not only did I not recognize, I don't have to recognize every human being, but they were taking those people there were clearly taking it non-seriously, talking loudly, filming what's going on screen, and PR shouting at them for doing it. But the PR also knows that they are going to do it. PR humiliating them because they tweeted in the middle of the film, but PR knows that this person that he has invited is that kind of person. So it became such a non-serious space that when I no longer had the professional compulsion to go and attend previews, I just stopped going. So all film industries, and Malayalam has done this, Telugu's done this, Hindi has definitely done this, have tried to discredit credible reviewers, and now they are battling a flood of people who they created, I have to take the film industry's word for it that those people are asking them for money. But it's not that there is actually been some solid journalism done on this front I've only done analytical pieces, and I have been writing about this from 2024. But my friend Suparna Sharma, who is a senior journalist, did this fantastic piece for Al Jazeera, which I think was published last year. And she even published a rate card that was circulating in the industry for Hindi film reviewers. And some of them are familiar faces. They are certainly not the people I have traditionally, conventionally respected as critics, but they are visible. And the reason why they've become very big names is that these film producers themselves would put up the names of these critics on their posters and say, so-and-so gave me 4 stars, so-and-so gave 5 stars. And you'll see so many posters these days where there are 10 names of organizations you've never heard of, but they've given 4 and 5 stars. And I have to tell you, Dhanya, I've actually faced aggression from a couple of Hindi film PRs because they would ask me for a review, like a couple of lines in advance about what I think about the film. And I would say, listen, I'm not going to tell you what my review is until it's published in the place where it's supposed to be published. And they started getting aggressive and saying, hum to aapka profile badhane ki koshish kar rahe hai. So, this is a self-perpetuating creation of a monstrosity. Now let them deal with it. But I have to say that, the troll kingdom might come to my comment section and say, you are a paid critic. But no serious film follower who is not a paid troll has any doubt that I am a serious film critic, because one has been doing this for 32 years. So let them, if the film industries are crying, that they are crying over a problem they themselves have created.
No, so recently I was talking to a politician in Karnataka and one in Telangana. Because a colleague of mine said that during whatever festival which came and went recently, 1 lakh rupees was given to a lot of journalists in Karnataka by a politician. So I was like, 1 lakh rupees, I don't understand why so much money is. When we used to go for press conferences, they would 500 rupees in an envelope and give, and some people would take it, some people would say no, right? So apparently the bribe levels in journalism itself has gone so high. And everything is so corrupted now and film reviews, I have always known, is a highly corrupted space where lots of money is given to publications, which were from the beginning itself. We had a reviewer, Soumya Rajendran. She still reviews movies for us. And Soumya was brutal about most of her reviews. So we used to write below, disclaimer, we have not taken money from anybody and we are not related to anybody in any of these movies, because that was important, right? Now, a couple of things from what Anna was saying. The whole case in Kerala, there was an amicus curiae who was appointed by the court to look into reviews. And I'll come to you, Sucharita, with this. So the amicus curiae report, we reported on this 2 years ago. I don't know what happened to that after that. So the amicus curiae had a very strange suggestion. that there should be a 48-hour embargo for reviews, which is after movie releases, 48 hours you do not have reviews. But he classified reviewers into two brackets. One, he took the name of Anupama Chopra, Bharadwaj Rangan, said that not reviewers like them who are part of these film critic review guild or whatever it is, but the other YouTubers who have suddenly popped up. And he said there can be no review bombing, which is lots of people putting together these bot stuff and then, people coming out of theaters and you ask opinions. I mean, I enjoy watching that, people coming out of theaters and, Mike just being crushed at them. But that's the difference which is amicus curiae asked for. What is your opinion on that? Can people be really segregated into, okay, old time reviews like Anna, 32 years, so good, non-corrupt, let her review, but somebody on YouTube cannot?
No. How are you going to make room for any new voices at all? Or underrepresented, marginalized voices, if you're only going to let the old guard do, and I'm not calling you, Anna, old by any measure, okay, girl? No.
Yeah, I'm old. I'm old enough to be your mom.
But you know what I'm saying. You cannot get this stuff. We live in the era of the internet. We are so far deep into it. Our world doesn't work without internet. How can you police and gatekeep any of this? I reject this suggestion entirely that some people are better than other people. How are you going to know that a 22-year-old might be the world's best thinker in the world? That's why all of this is so messy, because you cannot put up these guardrails.
No, but Sucharita, what the amicus curiae said is that these reviews, now he named some reviewers, like there's a guy called Ashwin Kok. Ashwin Kok uses like very strong language and he has a huge fan following, right? So the amicus curiae said these reviews can make or break a film. Therefore, give 48 hours to producer.
No, you can't, bhai. I don't think that is a smart move or a smart suggestion at all. You cannot tell people to censor themselves. It's censoring, right? Under what law are you saying that you're for an arbitrary 48-hour timeline? Now, who's to say that timeline is not going to change to 4 days and then a week and a month and then be like, you can never say anything unless you're a member of a particular film critics guild or in a publication? No. Unfortunately, we don't. That's just not how it works anymore. And platforms like YouTube, where I run my livelihood, are to be blamed to an extent as well, because provocative and controversial stuff works and you get paid by the algorithm without even worrying about anything else. YouTube will give you money for the duration for which people are watching your videos. If you make something so controversial and so enticing and so clickbaity that somebody's going to watch for like 8 minutes, 10 minutes, 12 minutes, you get money as people are watching you. So you cannot stop people from doing that sort of stuff, right? And to say that this kind of group of people can only talk and this group of people can only talk, absolutely not. And if this had happened 10 or 15 years ago, I would have never even come into the field. I would have never gotten my first break, because credit to Anupama Chopra, she put me on a new platform that she created and she let me run amok. She let me run wild. There was no like, you can't do this or you can't do that, because again, that was a different era. And I was saying things and we weren't really thinking that any of this can make people angry to a point where we're like, whoa, we have to self-censor. Not at all. And if this was the case back then I would have not even come into the field.
But when you say era, it is just a matter of 8 years. I mean, you're talking as if it happened
at the era has not changed since 2014. Have we not stepped into a new era? We have. And as we were stepping into the new era, I was coming up in the industry.
Then I wonder if the same kind of restrictions, you said, somebody is not qualified to make reviews, so but still the person is influential enough to make or break a big production. If let's just flip that, if you say that only a certain kind of filmmaker can make movies, you need to have a certain level of expertise. There has to be a story, or you can't make a movie. If these restrictions come up, I don't know how many movies will stand the test of that litmus test as such.
Where do we stop? Like, we can say like, oh no, you can't make a film, you can't write a film, you can't act in a film. Like, where do we stop? No.
Danya and Pooja, do you remember, just following up on what Pooja said, do you remember there were a couple of film directors in the Malayalam film industry last year and the year before who gave interviews or wrote on social media. One of them wrote on social media and the other gave interviews saying that people who are doing reviews haven't gone to journalism school and they need to have some basic qualifications, or they should go to film sets and only then should they be allowed to do reviews. Firstly, if that's the case, then only people who have gone to film schools should be allowed to make films. Who gets to decide these things? The point is, some people grow in the... I've been to journalism school, but not every journalist, not every senior journalist, not every great journalist has gone to a journalism school. So some people learn within the profession itself. And the other thing is that while personally I have made an effort actually during the course of my reporting, I have been on film sets and spent time there, but that was for my understanding of the industry. As a film critic, my job is not to be an expert on filmmaking. My area of expertise is film consumption. I am a consumer. When I go to a shop with my car and I say there's a problem, please fix it. The service engineer doesn't turn around and say, but which part of the car, which nut or which bolt is acting up. Right? Now, if I know and I'm knowledgeable, I could tell them, but they don't demand that I should. This demand is made by filmmakers when they have gotten negative reviews. And the same film critic, the next day, if that person gives them a positive review, then suddenly they are not saying, did this film critic do a PhD in film criticism? Then they are not asking, did this film critic go on to film sets? So, I mean, and why police? There are certain things, for instance, that have come up in the past decade that I find absolutely unacceptable. For instance, this thing called live tweeting, where some publications send a young person, a young reporter into the movie hall to live tweet while the film is on. I find that horrendous. It's awful. However, I know that as long as it is favorable, I've seen the reactions of filmmakers. As long as the live tweets are favorable, they don't object. But you should en masse as filmmakers be objecting so that you generate public opinion. Don't go to court. Generate public opinion against it. Like if I find a film politically unacceptable, whether it's misogynistic or Islamophobic, I haven't gone to court yet against a filmmaker saying your film was misogynistic. What's the point of my review? The review is a way of starting a conversation about the film. And that's the whole point. So these people who are crying foul of all these, generate opinion if you want. Let there be a healthy conversation, because when the discourse on cinema improves, good cinema requires good writers, people who are writing well on cinema. Because when there is quality film criticism, then the discourse on cinema improves. When the discourse on cinema improves, then the engagement with the film industry improves. And when that happens, then cinema improves. And even while all of this is going on, I have to say, I have had such fruitful discussions with some sensible filmmakers who've reached out to me saying, you wrote X or Y thing, and it made me think. And the next time I tried to be a little more conscious of it. And this is across board, across language industries, including people whose films I've been very critical of. So long as the critic is not making personal remarks about you, your husband and your wife and your children, please have the maturity enough to read the review and understand that it is coming from a person, most of the time, who loves cinema so much that she has decided to devote her life to writing on cinema. Don't you get it? She loves films as much as you love them. Therefore, she writes about them while you make them.
But moving on to another controversy that we saw, if you're talking about how critics are questioned whether you know how films are made, there is a person who knows his job. I think we can all agree pretty damn well, A.R. Rahman. and he made some very, very innocuous comments in a surprisingly freewheeling interview. I haven't seen Rahman this light in an interview in a long time. And the way people have gone after him. And my earlier Paresh Rawal comment was a little bit because of this, because for a change, he said he supported A.R. Rahman and I was thrown off by it. So I was like, what's happening? But what do you make of how people have gone after Rahman?
Rahman. This is Rahman we're talking about. This is a god amongst humans. I mean, I'm exaggerating for effect. A.R. Rahman, whose talent, whose abilities, whose capabilities knows no bounds, who has made music and enabled others to make music across languages, across film industries, who you can, as a legendary figure in his field, appears in interviews willing to talk about not just his work, but his beliefs. Because what is art if not beliefs? And one innocuous remark and every single person, starting from actors to trolls, the whole army is activated. It's so bizarre and it is so unfortunate. And I said this on my X page as well, that if the film industry and the keepers of the keys of the film industry or various, whatever decision makers do not begin to distance themselves from these troll accounts, the quality of cinema is going to continue to go down, because this is, at the end of the day, very disheartening, very demoralizing, and it attacks creativity. It hampers creativity. It puts a fear in your head of this sort of unpleasantness not to happen again. And social media is holding film industry to ransom. It's bizarre when you think about the larger image. A.R. Rahman, you can question him for which is what that journalist Haroon did, and he's a brilliant journalist who works for the BBC. And in fact, Rahul I said this on Twitter as well, that the biggest thing to take away from this is that Haroon is asking the questions Indian journalists want to, and talking about that self-censorship that we were talking about earlier. Indian journalists are unable to ask these questions right now. But Haroon Rashid did, and it's ridiculous. And also, it makes, again, to my previous point, it's just sad. It's sad that we're allowing this to happen, and without realizing the larger repercussions of something like this.
But Anna, were you surprised? Because Rahman is usually a little more cautious. Were you surprised that he did allow himself to at least say this?
I think that Haroon Rashid was asking such pointed questions that Rahman didn't have a choice. I've interviewed Rahman a couple of times, and he is very difficult to interview because he only responds in monosyllables.
Monosyllabic, yeah.
This was TV. And plus Haroon, plus Haroon was, I haven't interviewed Rahman for TV, where Haroon was just asking such pointed questions. I think he ended up answering in ways that he probably hadn't planned to, because I do remember an occasion many years ago when I was working with a TV channel, and one of the reporters on my team, I had asked that person to ask him for a reaction regarding a particular bomb blast that happened to have occurred on the evening of the interview taking place. And he actually made her switch off the mic and scolded her and told her, don't you know, I don't like to be talking about these controversial issues, and why are you dragging me into it? Whereas every reporter on our channel who was out in the field at that moment, had been asked for a reaction from whoever they were speaking to, whether it was a sports person, a film person, etc., etc. So yes, it came as a bit of a surprise, but I can see how it happened because Haroon was doing a good job. But second, the reaction is obviously not surprising. Rahman is Muslim, and Rahman is a very devout Muslim, and very open about his Muslimness. So of course they went after him. If it had come from somebody else, of course they would have gone after a Hindu or a Hindu film personality also. But the added factor for them was that Rahman is Muslim. The other thing, now I don't know if this is true or not because I haven't checked Haroon Rashid's background, but I saw some people on social media cursing Haroon, some right-wing Indian trolls cursing Haroon and saying he's Pakistani born. Now I don't know if that's true or not, but obviously
it is. He's Pakistani British.
Okay. So they see the word Pakistani and they see red. So there was that added element, but it's not surprising at all, yeah. Can I though just go back to an earlier point, because we were talking about film personalities demanding certain qualifications from film critics, and not qualifications that they necessarily have themselves. Many years ago, when I was working with the Indian Express, I had gone to interview Subhash Ghai. And he gave me lots of yarn about how he thinks that film critics should first go and watch the film, then have a conversation with the filmmaker about the intent, and then only write the review. Now, as it happened, a short while before that, a prominent national newspaper had asked Subhash Ghai to review a film that was made by Khalid Mohammed. Khalid, as you know, is a very, very senior veteran film critic. So I had the presence of mind enough to say, so Mr. Ghai, when you reviewed that film by Khalid Mohammed, did you go after watching the film and have a conversation with him to check his perspective and his intentions? And then, of course, he was embarrassed and he admitted that he hadn't. So, I mean, this is a perfect example. It was just immediately it just immediately presented itself to me. As long as a critic is honest, certainly if a person walks out in the middle of a film and doesn't acknowledge that they walked out in the middle of the film, but does a review of the film, then obviously that's dishonesty. But if a film critic has been honest in their review, has not made personal remarks, and has not been logically or factually incorrect, please see the review as something that encourages a conversation on a film and encourages a diversity of opinions on cinema. And one of the most beautiful things about cinema and the arts, after all, is that no two human beings, even if two human beings love a work of art, the reasons will be different, the explanations will be different. So don't kill that conversation, because right now the effort across all film industries in India is to kill the conversation. On top of which, the right-wing Hindutvavadi is trying to turn this into a pro-right, pro-Hindutva conversation on cinema, and both things are terrible for Indian cinema, and there is a reason why the quality of Hindi cinema has fallen so drastically during the Modi era. And one reason is this, that while critics haven't so far fallen for that pressure, the Hindi film industry has. They have self-censored to kingdom come, and they are making pro-right-wing Islamophobic, hate-filled films that are lying about history, and therefore they are killing their own art. Don't do to film criticism what you have done to your own art.
Yeah, on Rahman's point also, I've had also the good fortune of interviewing him a couple of times, most recently in September, just a few months ago, where he was at the Toronto International Film Festival with a new series that Hansal Mehta has made on Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Pratik Gandhi plays the role of Gandhi. And there's a bunch of incredible actors and incredible producers and everybody involved with the series. The series is not out yet. I don't know if there is a platform attached to the film yet. The last conversation I had was in September, where we were showed 2 episodes that premiered at the Toronto International Film Festival. They have a section for series as well. There I spoke with Rahman, and there he was a lot more effusive than I've ever seen him be before. Like, he actively says in my interview that we're going away from Gandhian principles and we go back to the time where we would care for each other and love. I'm paraphrasing, but we cared for each other, we loved for each other, and the world has devolved into a bad place. And which I was surprised to hear as well. To your point, Anna, he's very monosyllabic in his answers and is notoriously difficult to talk to, not because he's rude or mean or anything, but I think he's just an introvert when around people that he doesn't know. But he's been saying these things for the last couple of months in some way or the other. If you want, you can go check out the interview on my channel.
So now one new round of trolling for Rahman can start when
that interview came in September. So wo hona hota trolling, so it would have happened by now.
When I watched the BBC interview of Rahman, personally, I thought Rahman was being pretty wishy-washy, because except for 1 or 2 sentences, if you noticed, he was actually defending the industry in some ways. And he was also saying, then you noticed he said things like, oh, but do you think the viewer is going to get so easily influenced? So each time he said something which probably surprised himself, he backtracked.
It's not like he's doing some it's not Kranti. It's not like he's not out there fighting or defending or anything. He just said like something, which is what makes this whole situation so bizarre and so sad. Like, he didn't even say anything.
Yeah, he didn't even say anything. So actually, there's an interview we did with Khadija Rahman, his daughter, and I had a conversation with Khadija and Parvati. It was called Women of Power. she was very candid about, people telling her about the fact that she wears a parda and they keep talking about that. She was very candid about what she thought. Basically, she thinks that people can troll and harass her how much ever they want, but she will continue with what she does. So she is someone who puts herself out there. So yeah, I think we'll conclude this discussion. And surprisingly, me and Pooja, who know nothing about movies, I mean, Pooja better than me, of course, handled this quite not so badly, I feel. And I have only one experience with movie reviewing, which happened very badly. I actually walked out of movie. I tweeted that. And when I got rape threats and I filed a police complaint against this Vijay fan, I had to take back the complaint because the family approached me saying that he's a young guy and all that. And I realized one thing, he did not know my name. He did not know my existence. He did not know News Minute, Danya, nothing. Somebody just told him that I am a fan of Ajit, another Tamil actor. I have no clue why. And they were just told on their WhatsApp groups to come and humiliate me. Today, he is the spokesperson of the party. And we talk to each other. We talk to each other. He calls me Akka. Akka is sister. I took back the complaint. I interviewed him also. I had this whole discussion with him on how a troll becomes a spokesperson and then also speaks to the person who gave a complaint against him, right? So I feel a lot of these people, especially young people, have no clue that they're being drawn into this whole thing by a Sandeep Banga, by a Salman Khan, whoever it is. And they are wasting so much of their energy, their emotions, their life into this nonsense when they can also just watch a movie and then switch off their brain.
Can I just add two quick points? One, of course, is Sucharita, you said that Harun asked questions that we Indian journalists can't. While I'm not doing a TV interview show anymore, I got off TV many years back. I have to say that I am continuing to ask the questions that I want to. And if it makes people angry, then so be it. If you write for the independent media, then you will find spaces that are willing to publish you when you ask pointed and challenging questions. And I still think that there are people who are willing to answer those questions also. So if journalists are self-censoring, that's a problem. And that's something journalists have to examine themselves for and introspect about, because the fact is that then if film journalists are self-censoring because they're afraid they won't get the next interview, then film journalists are doing exactly what film people are doing, the Hindi film industry particularly, far more than any other, which is that preemptively they are not making films on subjects they think that the right wing will get upset about. And the second thing is, I will end on this. Dhanya, many years ago, when Twitter had just started and I was interviewing a particular major Tamil film star, I will not name this person, and this person told me that they are not on social media. At that point, they weren't. And I said, why not? It's an interesting space. I'm just learning about it. And this person said, but how am I to know that when I am reading comments, those comments are by actual people and not by a fan of X or Y Tamil star? And this person named two other major Tamil stars and said, how am I to know that this person is not paid by that star to write negative tweets to me? And even if it's for 2 seconds, I'm stressed out. So film people recognize that these games are being played by their own industry. And this was in fact a confession that this person was suspicious of fellow stars. So when they, instead of pointing fingers at the entire world and weeping over reviews written by legitimate, honest, credible film critics, let them look within.
Yeah, look at yourselves. And to the point of self-censoring in the journalists, like a lot of younger journalists also do not want to get in trouble, quote unquote, get in trouble on the internet, right? They'll lose their jobs. So that's another reason why people are not asking difficult questions, because you can't sacrifice that.
No, if your publication doesn't support you, that's
exactly.
But the fact is that there are publications that do support. It's important for the viewer to know that there are publications that do support it. And so journalists who want can seek out those spaces. And no journalist should feel, no young journalist should feel that this is the end of the road and that there is no publication that will let them ask challenging questions.
Yeah. We let you ask, but we don't have any vacancies.
No, I was just reminded of the first and last time you ever asked me to review anything, Tanya. I don't know if you'll remember. Many years ago, there was a series called Big Bad Billionaires, and she'd asked me to review the Vijay Mallya episode because I had reported on that quite closely. I mean, I've met him a few times. He has great style, great swag. Mallya I'm talking about. But the way that series whitewashed him made me so angry. I wrote like a scathing piece about, because I was reminded of all the, the protests, the people, the families kill themselves. So Danya's like, okay, we'll carry this, but you haven't spoken anything about the piece itself. You're just very angry. So I think after that, she's never going to ask me to review anything because
That's why movie reviewers, all journalists cannot be movie reviewers. Pooja and me are perfect examples of that. Anyway, so we'll come to a close. All of you are ready with your recommendations. Sucharita, you have a recommendation?
My recommendations. Okay, so Lynn Ramsey's film Die My Love releases on Mubi India this week. It is an incredible movie starring Jennifer Lawrence and Robert Pattinson about motherhood and writing and isolation. Brilliant film. Aside from that, Marty Supreme is releasing this week in India as well by Josh Safdie, written by Ronald Bronstein, starring Timothée Chalamet, Odessa Zion, Gwyneth Paltrow, Kevin O'Leary. The big film. So that film doesn't really need my recommendation. But if I had to point at something, I would say go watch Die My Love by Lynn Ramsey. Incredible film.
Okay, forgive me for giving recommendations that are not film related. There is this series of interviews that Harsh Mandar has done for Himal South Asian called Partitions of the Heart. And it's interviews with prominent Muslims, young and senior, about life in India at the moment as a Muslim. It's a long series of many interviews, and I have learned so much from them, but also they're heartbreaking. I'm very moved by them. I would recommend that series. Secondly, there is a Malayalam film that is already on a streaming platform called Avihidam. Since one is talking about filmmakers who self-censor, I want to recommend this film, Avihidam, because it's by a filmmaker called Sena Hegde, who has immense courage and intelligence to make a super political film and keep us laughing about it. And there's also a book called The Holocaust Industry by Professor Norman Finkelstein that I would recommend. I'm really, really reading a lot on the genocide in Palestine and the history of the genocide and the history of the of the occupation of Palestine. So there's that book too. So hey, I threw in a film recommendation. You shouldn't be angry with me.
Pooja?
So I have two recommendations. This piece, slightly longish piece in the New Yorker. It's called The New York Shooting That Defined an Era. It goes back about the first shootings of African Americans and how people are still reminded of that. And another is a book. Last week, I recommended two books that were written from the perspective of female characters in Ramayana, Mahabharata. This is a continuation of that. This is called The Palace of Illusions. It is written from the perspective of Draupadi. I find these very intriguing how characters that are otherwise put as wallpapers have so much to add to these stories. So that's my recommendation.
I have a simple recommendation. It's again a New Yorker story. It's about the hostile takeover of CBS News. I mean, when I read it and then when you look at what's been happening here, let's not forget that the cases against Prannoy Roy has been quashed, but we already have had a takeover here of NDTV. So do read that. So thank you, Anna. Thank you, Sucharita, for joining us, and to everybody listening and watching. Do not forget to take a subscription. This is not just a random reminder. For both the News Minute and News Laundry to exist, to survive, we just need a few thousand subscriptions, not a lot. And we are working towards that. So do take that. Do read all our stories behind paywall. Thank you to my producer, Bhuvan, editor, Jasim, Sukanya, Yana, and Ajay.